Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello, everybody. How is it going today? I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. My day has been pretty good. I have to admit, I've been a little exhausted lately. I feel like I'm running on fumes. But coming here and sharing these positive stories with you always gives me more energy and uplifts me. So I'm super excited to be back and sharing more positive feel-good stories with you today. I have lots of good ones today. I have some positive things about the pandemic, so that's always good. And stick around to the end of the episode because I have a really cool story about a NFL player who is opting out of the NFL season this year. Stay tuned to hear who that is and why exactly he's doing that. It's a pretty interesting story. But let's start today's episode with a story about COVID-19. But of course, it's all positive. Everything I talk about in this podcast is positive and feel good to hopefully uplift you and give you some positive vibes. So let's just jump right into it. So in the wake of the lockdowns, coal and natural gas look like it could be the biggest COVID-19 casualties. So I know you've probably heard me talk a lot about coal and gas stories throughout this pandemic. Throughout this podcast, I've shared lots of positive things about the environment and things that like COVID-19 has helped. And coal and gas is one of the things that has continuously come up with stories in multiple different countries and all these different things going on. Well, they are saying now that yes, natural gas and coal could be the biggest casualties of COVID-19. So they're saying, what's front and center has been the extreme volatility and carnage that's occurred in the energy sector. The companies are now in survivor mode. So they're saying with a summer that was one of the warmest on record in many parts of the world, an oversupply of natural gas has caused the sharpest ever fall in demand for the commodity. The fall is expected to reach double that of the 2008 financial crisis, around a 5% drop. And natural gas has so far experienced a less severe impact than oil and coal, but it is far from immune from the current crisis. They say the record decline this year represents a dramatic change of circumstances for an industry that had become used to strong increases in demand. So the energy watchdog speculates that demand will continue to contract until 2025, eliminating the last few years of growth in the gas sector. So those last few years have seen $65 billion of investments in liquefied natural gas assets, which are now coming online in this unstable economy. And the result is a serious risk of global oversupply, compromising the structure of the gas market and reducing the chance that any investors will find sense in backing this expansion any further. But they're saying the strong increases in demand, and his name is Dr. Birol. He says he's referring to as often as a result of a gas as a natural replacement to coal. So without perfect solutions for the storage of energy generated by renewables, gas has often taken the place of coal, which has fallen significantly even as governments continue to invest hundreds of billions of dollars into these coal projects, but many of which are now at risk of being so expensive to operate they may become stranded assets, and the projects are incapable of providing a return on investment. So they're saying the United Kingdom didn't even power up a coal-fired plant for a period of 2 months, so that was between April 10th and June 17th. And with wind energy alone supplying almost as much electricity as natural gas did in the first quarter. So 52 days of zero coal or generated power in Portugal. The utility company EDP announced that the closure of the last plant 2 years ahead of schedule. And they are the fourth European country to do so, to completely phase out coal. And that was behind Austria, Sweden, and Belgium. So now in the USA, the renewables will account for over a fifth of electricity generation this year, having at one point surpassed coal usage every day for a month, which hasn't happened for 150 years. So since the Statue of Liberty first arrived in New York and Carl Benz patented the world's first automobile. So Larry Fink, who is the CEO of BlackRock, it's the world's largest asset management company, wrote a letter earlier this week to the executives that rely on Larry Fink for money management services. And he stated that his number one goal for investing would be how companies are planning to combat climate change. He says we'll be increasingly disposed to vote against management and board directors when companies are not making sufficient progress on sustainability-related disclosures and the business practices and plans underlying them. He says many other brokerage firms rely on BlackRock for advice and guidance, and his decision could move mountains in the financial sector, as they say. So with all of these triumphs, it's important to point out that many governments are reluctant to put down coal. It's still easier to store than renewables, and in many cases, because the infrastructure is already there. So existing plants and companies that rely on coal spend a lot of money lobbying governments to keep their industry alive. But despite countries still clinging to coal, like Germany, for example, which just opened a new coal plant, and other nations across Asia, market forces are far more powerful than the actions of the government. And so energy firms require billions in investment capital from people like Larry Fink in order to fund coal projects. And people like Larry Fink aren't interested in coal and natural gas any longer. So there you have it, some COVID-19 positive things for you. As well, I want to share 41 states have reduced their carbon emissions while growing their economy, as they say. So reducing carbon emissions while increasing gross domestic product is not only possible, but it's already happening in almost every single state in America. This is all to a new report that I'm going to share with you. So things like market investment in renewable energy companies or projects and the development of storage technology have helped propel this transition in 41 U.S. states and D.C. So all major regions in the U.S. from 2005 to 2017 were found to increase real GDP, which is a common marker for economic productivity, while simultaneously cutting the growth of or reversing greenhouse gas emissions. They said that the nonprofit World Resource Institute, so the WRI, also credits improvements in vehicle emission standards, increasing in lighting and appliance efficiency, and a shift from coal to natural gas in the power sector, like we just talked about, and the rapid deployment of wind and solar power. And the 5 that cut their local carbon emissions the most, despite federal policy, while still growing their economies, were Maryland, which is 38%, New Hampshire, 37%, the District of Columbia, 33%, Maine, 33%, and Alaska, 29%. Massachusetts and New York businesses and homes cut their emissions by 25%, while simultaneously growing their GDP by 26% and 21%, proving that being green doesn't always cost you green. The 9 states that did not reduce emissions while growing GDP were Louisiana, Texas, Washington, Mississippi, South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho, and Nebraska. But the renewable energy industry in America generated, according to the WRI, $238 billion in revenues in 2018, and the sector's 11% growth in 2018 was almost 4 times the growth of the U.S. economy overall. So the United States is the second only to China in total clean energy investments, and investors across the world have been breaking records, but particularly in the United States, where the green domestic record of $78.3 billion was tallied just last year. So even though Americans' wallets are squeezed this year and the nation is a consumer-driven economy, the long-term drivers for financial sector investment in clean energy remain very strong and could likely preserve through COVID-19 economic downturn. and it's simply too expensive in most countries to try and finance, produce, and run coal plant due to the rapid increase in renewable technology and replacement of coal plants by natural gas plants, like we mentioned before. So it's encouraging that 41 U.S. states and the District of Columbia reduce their energy related to CO2 emissions while increasing real GDP in recent years. So this trend shows that a huge swath of the nation is creeping in the right direction. There you have it, 2 very positive stories about the environment and renewable sources and natural ways of energy. So I wanted to start off and share those things with you because it's always nice to hear a positive thing about the pandemic. You know, it's not all bad. We gotta look on the positive side, gotta look on the bright side, and feel good about these things. So hold on to the positivity because that's what I'm doing every single day. I know we got a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things going on, but hold on to that positivity and you always will have America Still Beautiful to bring you good vibes. All right, so it's time for a little bit of a break, but when we get back, I'm going to jump into some more really awesome stories to share with you today, including one about a man who repays his debt to this English family who saved him, and what he did to repay his debt is pretty incredible. And then, of course, do not forget to hold out to the end of today's episode when I'm going to talk about the NFL player who is opting out of the season for a pretty special particular reason. So don't go anywhere. I will be right back.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Just in case you forgot my name, that's me. Hello, hello. So I'm back. I'm sharing more positive feel-good stories with you today. And let's just jump right back into it. So let's see here. I want to share with you a little fun survey that was done, or this little study, I guess I should say, saying that Americans polled on the best dance songs of all time that they're saying are essential for socially distant Zoom dance parties. If you are spending your time hanging out with your friends over Zoom or whatever other video online chat you're doing, maybe you're FaceTiming or whatever you're doing, I know I have been trying to stay in touch with lots of my friends through video call like everybody else is, and so they're saying that these songs are perfect for your Zoom dance parties. So if you want to rock out, let's see what Americans are saying are the best dance songs. So 3 in 5 Americans are boosting their moods after this much at home with indoor dance parties and their karaoke sessions. I feel like a lot of people have been doing this during quarantine. They're just like staying at home and like jamming out, finding new music, finding new creative outlets right now. And I think dancing and music has definitely been a very common thing that people are doing to help keep them in a positive, feel-good mood during all of this. Well, there was a study of 2,000 Americans that examined the important role of music that has played a light in the current events right now. And they found that 38% have thrown a dance party with their friends via video chat. So if you're part of that 38%, there you go. And then when they asked what songs they put on their social distancing dance playlist, they were often mixed in with classics like September from Earth, Wind and Fire and Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars, they say. And when asked to name some of the best dance songs of all times, I Want to Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston's, came out on top. Billie Jean by Michael Jackson and Staying Alive from the the Bee Gees have also made it to the top 3. They say about 4 in 5, so about 79% cited music as a way to help them stay connected with others while social distancing. And this survey found that when it comes to their taste in music, many think of themselves as taste makers. So 3 in 5 Americans think they have good taste in music, and it's a talent they're born with. Music preferences can even have an impact on the dating game, they say, with 2/3 saying bad taste in music is a romantic buzzkill. You ever gone on a date and realized that they have the complete opposite interest in music with you? Yeah, definitely not gonna... It's not really a positive thing of a date. I don't think there's anything worse than, like, completely... Like, everyone has different music tastes, but there's nothing worse than, like, you literally liking the complete opposite and, like, hating each other's music taste. Like, that just never works. How are you ever gonna hang out in the car? How are you ever gonna, like, go on a road trip? Well, I guess this survey proves that it is a romantic buzzkill. 1 in 2 have also been embarrassed by their own music taste. They say that some of the respondents even hiding their guilty pleasure preferences from a date. So 3 in 10 confessed to lying to a partner about their love for a song or an artist. I am guilty of this. I'm a country music fan, and where I live right now, there's not a lot of country music fans out here, and I never lie that I always say I love my country music, but I think I hold back about how much I love it when I first meet someone, because people don't always take it the best way. But half of the respondents like everything when it comes to music. They say that 15% classify their taste as just electric, anything kind of that happens. I think that's a lot of people kind of will listen to everything, you know, like some more than others. But of those who create their own playlists, 7 in 10 say that they have separate playlists for private listening versus party listening, and 50% overall admitting that they would feel embarrassed if a song from their personal collection found its way onto a party mix by mistake. Yeah, I think we all have that, like, closet music that we listen to that no one else listens to, or we don't think anyone else listens to, even though, of course, people do, so we just kind of hide that away. But there's nothing wrong with having your own private playlist that you can jam out in your car. They also say that music definitely plays a vital role in the success of a party, since 4 in 5 think that it can make or break the event. And music came only second to drinks on a list for elements of a successful event, with food rounding out the top 3. That makes sense, right? Music, food, drinks pretty much sums up a good time. And 78% of the respondents said that there's certain songs guaranteed to make people move and groove during their party. So there's a huge list of 40 different songs, and the top 3, like I said before, were I Want to Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston, Billie Jean, Michael Jackson, Staying Alive, the Bee Gees, and then Uptown Funk, Bruno Mars, Dancing Queen by ABBA, Just Dance by Lady Gaga, let's see, Work by Rihanna, Shake It Off, Taylor Swift. The list goes on. We got Sexy Back by Justin Timberlake, Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. That's a good one. Jump Around, House of Pain, Everybody, Backstreet Boys, Wannabe by the Spice Girls. These are classics. I feel like a lot of these definitely will get everybody dancing. So there is a huge list of 40 top songs that people say are the best for the virtual dance parties to get people moving. So you can go search it up online and find the top 40 if you really like to add that to your list of your party songs. All right. Now, moving on from the dancing, let's talk a little bit more about the environment. So, 5-cent tax successfully reduced plastic bag use in England by as much as 95% over 5 years, which is a great alternative that has now emerged. So, you know, like everywhere, everyone is trying to get rid of single-use plastic, but the single-use plastic bag sales in England have fallen dramatically since this 5p charge on each bag was instituted in October of 2015 in the supermarket and department stores. So they're saying that plastic bag use by falling by 95% in the supermarkets. So the statistics from the Department of Environment and Food and Rural Affairs determine that the plastic bag use shot up in 2014 as consumers used an average of 140 per year. So that's 61,000 metric tons of plastic, after taking action to curb this by raising the charging to 5 cents, and that has now plummeted, just 4 bags per consumer in the recent year. So, pretty interesting. They're also saying that collectively, let's see here. Collectively, they've sold 325 million fewer bags than over a period of 2018 to 2019, and 1.17 billion fewer than the same period of 2016 to 2017, which is pretty incredible. They say it's really encouraging to see in such a short space of time the huge difference our plastic carrier bag charge has had in reducing the amount of plastic we use in our everyday lives. We all have seen firsthand the devastating impact that plastic bags have on the environment, littering our beautiful countryside and threatening the world's marine life. I am committed to driving this progress further, and I hope this continues to inspire similar action across the globe. So that was the MP, George Eustace. And he says consumer throwing bags away isn't the only part of the plastic bag problem that requires addressing to stop them ending up landfills or in the oceans. So manufacturing, so the supply side forces, play such a large role as consumers, so demand side forces as well. So the 5 pence tax applies to unused and unsold plastic bags as well, so making retailers pay closer attention to how many they order, which in turn leads to less manufacturing and less waste in the supply side in addition to the demand side. So there you go, another positive story about the environment, trying to get rid of that single use of plastic. So, like I promised, I have a story about a man who is repaying his debt to an English family who saved him from a life of poverty because he was going to be selling peanuts for $1 a day. Okay, so let me give you the background of this story. His name is Gopal Vakok. I probably did not say that right, but he was just 12 when he met the Hansen family. They were on a holiday where he was walking 10 miles a day selling peanuts to tourists on the southwest coast of India. And he says that sometimes he'd sleep on the beach and other nights in a tent on the side of the road, providing for his 3 younger siblings and his mother. And so he went up to this couple, Carol Thomas and Colin Hansen, and the sister-in-law, Linda Hansen, and he just asked if they would like to buy some peanuts. And they did a whole lot more than just buy some peanuts for him. They took him shopping for clothes and for food for his family of 5. And they promised him that they'd see him when they returned next year. And by pure chance, the couple in their 50s bumped into him on the beach 12 months later. And that just initiated a lifelong bond. And within the days, this family pursued him and his mother and his family to help them even further. They sent money from the UK for food and supplies and paid for the family to live in a rented home every monsoon season and coming to visit them for months at a time. And it was a stark improvement for his mother, who would scavenge for plastic bags to sell for money and allowed the kids actually to go back to school. And then at the age of 19, he was visiting his foster family in the UK. Well, he calls them the foster family in the UK for months at a time. And on one trip, he joined with the local cricket team for a match. And it was there that they asked him if he'd considered joining the British Army. And he just leaped at the chance to repay the people and the country who had saved him. So 10 years on, he's now 35. He lives in Mansfield, Nottinghamshire with his wife Jasmine and their 7-year-old daughter. And he says he feels like the luckiest kid in the world. He says, the main reason I wanted to join was to make my family proud and say thanks to Linda, Colin, and Carol for everything that they did for me. I will forever be in debt to them, but joining the army was my way of repaying them by doing something important in this world. He says, there was a day when I had no food, nowhere to sleep, and nothing to look forward to in life. Now I have a loving family with an incredible wife and an amazing daughter. I really could not ask for more. And the Hansons said that they could not be more than happy. He has made us all extremely proud with what he is achieving in the army, and now he has a wonderful family too. It was an amazing journey, and we're overjoyed to have met him. Isn't that just like a touching story? It just like warmed my heart, everything coming full circle. An act of kindness can go such a long way. Like the act of kindness to buy him clothes and get some food for his family changed this man's life and his family's life. And just that act of kindness from this family, made such a huge difference. Such a cool story. All right, it's time for another break, but then we're on our last stretch, and I'm going to be sharing with you the story about the NFL star who is opting out of the NFL season. So don't go anywhere. I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. more. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast. In case you forgot again, my name's Alyssa Jo. I am your host. Hello, hello. We're on the last stretch of today's episode, so let's finish off today with a few more feel-good positive stories for you. I have another positive thing that has happened during the COVID-19 lockdowns. So, rhino poaching has plummeted 53% during the lockdowns. This is extending 5 years of success in South Africa. Pretty cool. So rhino poaching in South Africa has literally decreased by 53% in the first 6 months of 2020, which is a continued dramatic downward trend over the last 5 years. They say after a decade of implementing various strategies, efforts are finally paying off. Say we have been able to arrest the escalation of rhino losses. And that is the Minister of Environment and Forestry and Fisheries, Miss Barbara Creasy. And the minister also said that the nationwide COVID-19 associated law enforcement measures to restrict movement has powered the ongoing decline in rhino poaching compared to the same period last year, calling it absolutely striking. So it was celebrated in the Kruger National Park, where during April, no rhinos were killed in the intensive production zone for the first time in almost 10 years. And between January and June, 38 suspected rhino poachers have been arrested in the KNP and 23 firearms confiscated, while 57 suspects have been arrested during joint sand parks and ECI or SAPS operations outside of the KNP. And the ministry also reported that from January to June of 2020, the National Prosecuting Authority managed to not only obtain convictions in 15 cases, but maintain a remarkable conviction rate of 100%. In addition to these high conviction rates, lengthy sentences were almost imposed by the courts. And in February, the ministry reported a 23% decline in the number of rhinos lost to poaching in 2019, as well as 43% decline in elephant poaching. Pretty cool. They say the decline in poaching for 5 consecutive years is a reflection of the diligent work of the men and women who put their lives on the line daily to combat rhino poaching, often coming into direct contact with ruthless poachers. They say in celebration of World Ranger Day, the minister paid tribute to the men and women who commit to protecting the country's natural heritage and sometimes at the expense of their own safety. They say our rangers have remained at the forefront of the battle against poaching despite the national lockdown, contributing to the decrease in poaching. And in this time, rangers have had to face not only the threats posed by poachers, but they and their families have also had to deal with the danger of contracting COVID-19. So their work further strengthens the essential collaboration with the South African Police Service and the Priority Crime Investigation, the Department of Justice, and other sectors of the security forces to gather, analyze, and share intelligence on the wildlife trafficking so that the international related crimes can be effectively dealt with. There you go, another positive thing about the COVID-19 lockdowns. Now, this is a pretty cool story. There's this new, inexpensive, new smart mask, they're calling it, that amplifies a speaker's voice and can translate speech into 8 languages. How crazy is this? So it's a Japanese robotics company that developed a smart mask, and it amplifies your voice, it can transcribe dictation and translate speech into these 8 different languages, and they're going to be available to the public as soon as September. So they call it the Sea Mask, and it was designed by Japanese tech startup company Donut Robotics to improve the communication between airline workers and supermarket employees during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this mask, it's Bluetooth and it's connected to a user's phone, and it's capable of translating Japanese into Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Indonesian, English, Spanish, and French. And the company originally developed their AI-based translation technology for their Cinnamon robot to assist international travelers at the airport. But since most of the nation's airports were forced to close after the coronavirus outbreaks, the company applied their software to masks so that the industry workers and healthcare providers could speak more clearly from behind protective glass barriers and face coverings. Pretty cool, hey? So to fund the production of their invention, the Donut Robotics launched a crowdsourcing campaign on Japanese fundraising website. It's called Fundino, and that was back in June. And the company managed to raise 28 million yen, so that's $265,000. Get this, in just 37 minutes. How crazy is that? So after concluding another successful round of the crowdfunding in July, the Donut Robotics says that their first 5,000 to 10,000 masks will be distributed across Japan in December, and each of the masks is expected to cost between $40 to $50. So not bad at all. And the company also hopes to expand their distribution overseas to the UK and the US by April of 2021. So it's the smart mask. If you want to go see, there's a YouTube video of it. Japan creates speech translating smart mask, and you find out a little bit more information and you get to see this thing in action. It is so cool. It is weird, but it is so cool. The technology that we have these days is just incredible. So go check that out online if you're interested in more information about that. But now, like I promised, at the end of today's episode, I was going to share with you the NFL player who is deciding to opt out of the NFL season this year so that he can be working on the COVID-19 front lines. So he's a Super Bowl winning athlete. This is incredible. His name is Laurent Tardiff, the offensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs. You might know him. And he was celebrating the team's Super Bowl victory over the San Francisco 49ers. But now this football star is opting out of the upcoming NFL season. And he's a medical school graduate from McGill University in Montreal. And he's been working on the front lines of the COVID-19 outbreaks at a long-term care facility actually in Canada. And he says rather than returning to play the sport he loves, he says he's going to continue assisting as an orderly until the novel coronavirus is controlled. So he's only 29 years old, and he published an open letter to his social media followers just last week announcing his absence from the 2020 football season. He says, given the worldwide sanity crisis we are currently experiencing, the NFL and NFLPA have agreed to significant health and safety protocols to protect the players. There is no doubt in my mind the Chiefs medical staff have put together a strong plan to minimize the health risks associated with COVID-19, but some risks will remain. This is one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make in my life, but I must follow my convictions and do what I believe is right for me personally. That is why I've decided to take the opt-out option negotiated by the league and the NFLPA and officially opt out of the 2020 NFL season. So, according to ESPN, the opt-out option for the 2020 NFL season will offer about $350,000 in an accrued NFL season to players who are considered high risk for COVID-19, while players who are not considered high risk can earn about $150,000 for opting out. But the sports news website says that he was scheduled to make $2.75 million this season, and he's opting out for a lot less than that. But he says, being at the front line during this off-season has given me a different perspective on this pandemic and the stress it puts on individuals and our healthcare system. He says, I cannot allow myself to potentially transmit the virus in our communities simply to play the sport that I love. If I am to take risks, I will do for it caring for patients. He says, I want to thank everyone in the Kansas City Chiefs organization for their support and understanding. There you have it. The player who is opting out of the NFL season, opting out of a lot of money to continue working on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. I really wanted to share this story because it's just so cool to see people really, really taking huge steps forward and making huge changes in their life to try to better everybody else in the world and help out every single chance that they get. So it's just so cool to see this in action and show our support for a sports star, an NFL player who is opting out of so many amazing things to help try to protect other people and care for patients. And he'd rather be at risk, caring for patients than playing the sport he loves, which I just think is just a heartwarming, feel-good thing to see that happen. So there you have it. You stuck around to the end to find out exactly who the NFL player was and why he's opting out of that. But I think that's a pretty cool reason to be doing so. Well, that is all of the feel-good, positive stories that I have for you today. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I enjoyed sharing today's episode. So thank you so much for listening to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Thank you so much for being here. Do not forget to hit that subscribe button so that you are notified every single time I have new episodes out, which is every Mondays and Thursdays. As well, do not forget to head over to our social media challenges, hit that follow and like button because I update those regularly and I would love to engage with you. We got Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as do not forget to leave a 5-star review. You know how much I love reading the reviews. It makes my day. So go leave a review, chat with me. I would love to chat with you. Thank you so much for being here. Stay happy, stay positive, and spread kindness every single chance that you get. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.